Urgently, Pokrovsk, the Ukrainian armed forces turned the tide of events. Ours did it. Russians on motorcycles flew into a fiery trap. The attempt at a daring breakthrough turned into a disaster. These shots blew up the network. The first details of the unprecedented. Sersky made an urgent statement. The Z-bloggers howled. They didn't expect such a disgrace in Moscow. All this and more coming up. Watch until the end. Hello, this is Ukraine Today, Rinat Aslanova and the latest events. Urgent news from Pokrovsk. The attempt at a daring breakthrough by Russian soldiers turned into a real disaster. A viral video has exploded on social media, supposedly showing occupiers on motorcycles rushing into Pokrovsk. But the response from the Ukrainian armed forces struck them swiftly and mercilessly. Under the cover of thick fog, the Russians decided to carry out a covert operation to seize the city. The enemy assumed that the low visibility would deprive Ukrainian drones of the ability to conduct reconnaissance and strikes. In footage that has spread across the internet, you can see Russian soldiers sneaking into the city in worn-out civilian cars and motorcycles, disappearing into the thick haze. The battered vehicles, chaotic movement, and the darkness of the fog, the scene resembled something out of a post-apocalyptic movie. A Ukrainian fighter with the call sign Hus reported that the column of occupiers was partially destroyed. He noted that his unit also took part in crushing the Russian offensive, which was captured in the viral footage. Meanwhile, Russian bloggers threw a fit. According to them, publishing the video exposed the column and helped the Ukrainian armed forces deliver a precise strike. As a result, the attempt to enter Pokrovsk turned into yet another shameful defeat for the occupiers.
We all saw the famous video of the entry into Pokrovsk. Because of that bad person who filmed it and leaked it online, today there is a pile of dead and burned equipment in that area, but at least everyone got their hype.
They were destroyed just as they entered Pokrovsk. Neither the fog nor the mobility of their equipment helped the Russian occupiers. These shots went viral online. Meanwhile, the 7th Air Assault Corps reported that the Russian army has intensified its efforts to penetrate Pokrovsk from the southern direction. As of now, there are more than 300 Russians in the city. The occupiers' objective remains unchanged, to reach the northern border of Pokrovsk, followed by an attempt to encircle the agglomeration.
In recent days, the Russians have intensified their efforts to penetrate Pokrovsk using light vehicles through the southern outskirts. To do this, the enemy took advantage of unfavorable weather conditions, particularly dense fog. This reduces the effectiveness of our aerial reconnaissance and our ability to strike targets in open terrain.
Despite this, the defense forces continue to detect and destroy enemy groups. The city is being cleared by drone units, assault and airborne assault units, special operations forces, the Security Service of Ukraine, the National Guard, the National Police, and others. The commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Oleksandr Syrsky, commented on the situation in this sector of the front. He noted that in Pokrovsk and its surroundings, the Russians continue to suffer significant losses both in manpower and equipment. According to him, the Pokrovsk direction remains the main focus in the context of the Russian offensive. Therefore, the command is paying special attention to ensuring that Ukrainian soldiers in this area have everything they need. Ukraine is also trying to strengthen its logistical routes.
Assault groups of the occupiers and their concentrations are currently being detected, identified, and actively destroyed.
Meanwhile, Western experts reported that Russia had planned to fully capture the Ukrainian city of Pokrovsk by November 2024, but its troops are a year behind schedule. Despite their numerical advantage, the Russians were unable to quickly break through the defenses. Ukrainian forces are eliminating more than 20,000 occupiers every month. Now, according to Western experts, Moscow is preparing to consolidate control over the ruins of the city, throwing more and more manpower into the devastated neighborhoods of Pokrovsk. At this very moment, Putin has sent soldiers on meat grinder motorcycles into Pokrovsk. Shocking. The Russian army resorted to a brazen deception. The Ukrainian armed forces responded with a lightning-fast, fiery counterattack. You have to see this footage. Something unprecedented has happened on the front line. Sensational details. Watch.
Russian troops in Mad Max style are invading the ruined Ukrainian city of Pokrovsk. It was with this very headline that Reuters published an article about the situation around this city in Donbass.
Moscow claims that capturing Pokrovsk, which Russian media call the gateway to Donetsk, will allow it to advance north toward the two largest cities in Donetsk region, still under Ukrainian control, Kramatorsk and Sloviansk.
Russia has been trying to capture Pokrovsk for over a year now. At first, there were attempts to encircle the city and cut off logistics in order to threaten supply lines. Now the tactic is infiltration and the buildup of small units within the city. But time goes on and the city still stands.
According to Putin's plans, Pokrovsk and Myrnohrad were supposed to be taken sometime at the end of last year, probably in December 2024. Well, now a year has passed and they still haven't been taken, although the situation there is very serious.
The command of the air assault forces notes that the occupier is trying to sneak into the city in small groups using the fog as cover. The Russian army has been using infiltration tactics for several weeks now.
Recently, the Russians have stepped up their efforts to penetrate Pokrovsk using light vehicles through the southern outskirts. To do this, the enemy has taken advantage of unfavorable weather conditions, particularly dense fog. This reduces the effectiveness of our aerial reconnaissance and our ability to strike targets in open areas. Currently, there are more than 300 Russians in the city. Their objective remains unchanged: to reach the northern outskirts of Pokrovsk and then attempt to encircle the agglomeration, the 7th Air Assault Corps.
According to Ukrainian intelligence, the next deadlines for the capture of Pokrovsk are set for before December 15th and for Kupiansk by the end of the year. The enemy is probing Ukrainian defenses along almost the entire front line in order to find spots for new offensives. Now this concerns the Zaporizhzhia direction.
Russia has also stepped up its activity in the Novopavlivka direction. In this direction, the enemy has made advances over the past few months, and now they are trying to stretch our defensive line along the front, attacking not only in the Pokrovsk direction near Pokrovsk and Myrnohrad, but also attempting to expand offensive actions into Zaporizhzhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions.
Into Zaporizhzhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions.
In the Zaporizhzhia direction, using the fog as cover, the occupying army captured 3 settlements. This was stated by Commander-in-Chief Syrsky.
The situation has significantly worsened in the Oleksandrivka and Huliai-Pole directions, where the enemy, taking advantage of numerical superiority in manpower and equipment, advanced during fierce fighting and captured 3 settlements. Oleksandr Syrsky, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine.
Ukrainian defenders were forced to withdraw from Ravnopil in the Zaporizhzhia region to more advantageous positions in order to save as many of their soldiers' lives as possible. The enemy is suffering heavy losses in its attempts to advance. And just in the past 24 hours, the Ukrainian armed forces eliminated 58 Russian soldiers in this direction, and about 30 more were wounded.
As a result of comprehensive fire strikes on our positions near Ravnopil, in order to preserve the lives of personnel, Ukrainian units moved to more advantageous positions. The enemy's advance has been stopped. Actions to block and comprehensively strike the enemy are ongoing. Fierce fighting also continues in other sectors along the line of contact in these directions. The defense forces of southern Ukraine, 500 to 600 shellings using 2,000 munitions. As a result of this firepower, all positions, shelters, and fortifications in some settlements have been effectively destroyed and demolished. The enemy is now trying to bring in consolidation groups, but the defense forces are striking them and preventing them from gaining a foothold in these settlements.
The Ukrainian armed forces continue to inflict significant losses on the enemy in both manpower and equipment, while simultaneously destroying its offensive potential in rear areas.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Vengeance is not only at the front but also in the rear. Russians, get ready. Darkness and cold are creeping up on Russia. Russia will never forget this winter. Every new strike on Ukrainian energy infrastructure now results in harsh retribution from the Ukrainian armed forces. Ukraine's response is becoming ever more powerful. What the Kremlin was afraid to even imagine is becoming reality. All the details are coming up next.
More and more Russian cities are plunging into darkness. If Russians attack Ukraine's energy system, Ukraine will attack Russia's. The Ukrainian authorities warned about this, and the defense forces have demonstrated it clearly.
The roof was blown off.
This is what the Voronezh CHP plant looks like now, for example. It was attacked on November 9th. Reports say there were at least 3 direct hits. After the explosions, part of the city was left without electricity.
Voronezh is a pretty major city. There are a lot of enterprises in Voronezh, including those working for the military, electronics among them. There are aviation plants there, both military and civilian.
This is exactly the difference between Russian and Ukrainian strikes on the power grid. In addition to a deserved response, the goal of the Ukrainian defenders is to plunge into darkness those energy infrastructure facilities that support the operation of Russia's defense industry.
There's a dual purpose here. First, to really show Russia that it's not just them who can do this. We can respond in kind to certain things as well, and to really try to stop their powerful machine, and to work to undermine and weaken the military-industrial complex that is actively working against us in this war.
I think this trend will
continue. At first glance, pecking away at the Russian energy system, gradually knocking out various elements of their infrastructure, might just seem satisfying, like when people in Belgorod or Voronezh are left without power for a while. But let's think about this. In some ways, the configuration of the Russian energy system might be similar to ours, in the sense that the same power lines can supply not only the residential sector, but also, for example, industry and railway transport. That's why none of these attacks are random. The goal is not just to respond, but to respond painfully so that the facilities supplying power to the military-industrial enterprises of the aggressor country can no longer fuel the Kremlin's ambitions.
When various elements of the integrity of Russia's energy system are gradually undermined, it primarily means that somewhere a train carrying something the Rashists need for the war will come to a halt, or there will be rolling blackouts at a factory producing goods important to Russia.
And according to experts, not all such enterprises are located deep in the rear. Many facilities are located not far from the Ukrainian border. For example, strategic Tu-95MS bombers are repaired in Taganrog, and one of the manufacturers of components for the Russian missile program, specifically solid fuel for Iskanders, is located just 150 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. It is entirely possible to plunge them into electrical darkness. There are undoubtedly such important facilities for the Russian military-industrial complex in the Moscow region, and for that matter, even in Moscow itself.
I think the psychological effect of Moscow being plunged into darkness, is much more powerful than us restoring a few factories there. Because it's precisely this main mass, this so-called office plankton, who live off the regions, who will finally realize that something is happening and that something needs to be done.
In this way, Ukraine will kill not 2, but 3 birds with 1 stone. A just response, the paralysis of Russian military-industrial facilities, and psychological pressure on the Kremlin. Sounds like the perfect target for the next blackout. What do you think about the latest events? Share your opinion in the comments, like the video, and stay up to date with the most important news. There's more to come.